Classmates. It's time for class. The form component is an essential element for building user interactions. It can change based on user interactions. The interfaces provided by these components make it easier to handle form data responsive to user interactions. The content of form components is very diverse, including label components, textura components, input components, button components, switch components, and form components, among others. Today, we are going to learn about the label component. The label component is an extension of a heading component, used to display names or titles. However, its primary usage lies in improving the usability of form components. Here's its basic usage. This is a test label. It displays a name or a title. Its second usage is to enhance the usability of form components. How does it enhance the usability of form components? Most of the time, label components are limited to basic usage. In fact, many tags can serve as headings, such as H1 to H7 tags, or view components, among others. Where does the label component truly shine? Actually, it's about improving the user experience of form components. For example, in a form, there's a set of radio buttons. By default, when users make a selection, they must click on the specific area of the radio button, rather than the entire option. This is a radio button, with two options inside a radio group. By default, clicking here is necessary. Is clicking on the area behind effective? No, it's not. Moreover, mobile screens are generally smaller, making operations in such small areas prone to mistakes. In fact, the expected user interaction is with the entire option. In other words, users expect to be able to select the option by clicking anywhere here. How should this situation be handled? This is where a very important feature of the label component comes into play, which is the internal positioning functionality. This can be achieved using the for attribute, and it can be used to improve the accessibility of form components by using the for attribute to find the corresponding form component's ID, or by nesting the form component within the label tag. Clicking will trigger the corresponding component. The priority of that for attribute is very high, surpassing other internal components. We can bind button components, checkbox components, radio components, or switch components. This is its for attribute. Let's look at an example. First, this is a regular label, demonstrating its basic function as a heading. Below it, there's a radio group with two radio buttons, one for male and one for female. As you can see, clicking on the text behind the buttons is ineffective. Only clicking on this area works. Now, when we click, it feels quite convenient, since we're using a mouse on a screen. If it's a mobile screen, this area is very small, meaning only clicking on this specific area is effective. We want clicking on the entire area to be effective. We can improve the usability. Let's take another look at the radio label that improves usability. How is it done? We wrap the radio tag with a label tag. Compared to the previous code, we simply add a label tag around the radio tag. The for attribute of the label tag is set to man, which is the ID attribute value of the radio component. Now, clicking on the text behind the button is effective. This is how the label tag is used to improve the usability of form components. Why do these areas sync? Because they're all bound to the same value. The same goes for the label tag below, with its for attribute set to woman, matching the ID attribute value. Now, we've improved the usability of the radio component. Clicking anywhere within this label is effective. Let's take another look. When improving usability, the label tag, besides being usable with radio components, can our button component also be used? Yes, it can. Now, the label tag wraps a button. And there's also some test text wrapped in a view component. When we click on this text, it is equivalent to clicking the button. Let's see what happens when we click this button. It will execute the handle-click method, which pops up a dialog with the content test. Clicking on the button is definitely effective. If we click on the text as well, a pop-up window will also appear. Why? Because the label tag is used to wrap both the text and the button, and the for attribute is set to the button. This means that clicking anywhere within this area is effective. Clicking on either the text or the button will produce the same result. The for attribute of the label component can also improve the usability of the switch component. Clicking in front is effective. Does clicking on this text work? It works too, because it's wrapped in a label tag. This significantly increases usability when clicking. Now, let's delve into a specific example. Here, we can see that the label tag wraps around the radio component, but it's done through a loop rendering with data sourced from an array called list. The list array contains 3 objects, each with tightly and value attributes. The for loop renders the data from the list array, and its for attribute is set to item value, which is the ID attribute value of the radio component. There are 3 radio components in total, and the text behind them is also clickable. Clicking anywhere is effective. Clicking anywhere within this area can trigger a response. This enhances the usability of the form component. Classmates, today, we've shared the usage of the built-in label component in UniApp. Its most basic usage is to represent a heading, though this is less common. Its more frequent usage is to improve the usability of form components, primarily through its for attribute, enhancing the usability of other form components. This is the most important functionality of the label component. That's all for today's lesson. Thank you, everyone.